Okay, our second issue for today is should the U.S. increase the minimum wage to be a living wage for all workers? We see the liberal side on the left with this apparently very rich person on a giant pile of money screaming, "Your greed is hurting the economy." As this person saying, "Hey, raise the minimum wage." The other person saying, "Hey, here's a small business owner. I have some good news, bad news for you. Democrats want to increase the minimum wage." "Oh, that's great, man," says the worker. And the bad? "Well, you're fired. I can't afford that." So, kind of encapsulates both sides. Let's get a little background. Minimum wage was established in 1938 during the Great Depression as a measure to help stabilize the economy and protect workers. And the goal was to keep a minimum standard of living to help protect the health and well-being of employees throughout our country. And it's steadily been increased as the cost of living has gone up. And conservatives and liberals differ on whether or not the minimum wage A should be increased, and B, whether or not it should exist at all. So let's go into the affirmative first. Should the U.S. increase the minimum wage to be a living wage for all workers? And to this, the liberals are going to say yes. The current minimum wage is not a living wage. Minimum wage was designed to secure that those who work 40 hours a week, who do the right thing, who are out being productive members of society. You work for 40 hours, often in a very difficult, often manual labor job, and at the very least, you'll be able to make enough to pay for the bare essentials of your life with your income, to be able to pay for food, shelter, utilities, the bare minimum. We're not talking about making minimum wage and living in a mansion, that you can make enough to be able to support yourself and your family. The current minimum wage is $7.25. And that's not if you're a restaurant worker. I believe it was $2.13 an hour in New Jersey. But $7.25 in the U.S. That means $2.90 a week. That is $11.60 a month, which comes out to be about $13,920 a year. The minimum level for poverty in the U.S. is about $12,000 a year. So you're right above the threshold of poverty. And in the United States, especially depending on where you live, if you live in New York and New Jersey, if you live in areas with a higher cost of living like San Francisco, that's definitely not going to be enough to provide for food, shelter, and energy for one person, let alone a family. And many people now are shut out of pursuing higher paying jobs because of high college costs. And without a living wage, low wage earners are trapped in a cycle of poverty. They'll never have a chance to get out of it. And minimum wage workers often now have to work multiple jobs just to get by. And this means that there's less time with their family. That means a poorer quality life for most Americans. Who's going to be taking care of their child when they're going to be having to work multiple jobs a day? Imagine a single parent who's working multiple minimum wage jobs. That definitely is going to affect the quality of life for both them and their children. When adjusted for inflation, liberals are going to counter U.S. workers have not seen wage increases for decades. Yeah, the minimum wage has gone up, but not according to inflation. It's pretty much been stagnant. And as we see that the wage rate increase when adjusted for inflation is flat, the overall productivity of the U.S. worker has gone up, as has the cost of living has gone way up above what the minimum wage is. So essentially, the average American worker, especially those who are working in lower wage jobs, those who are not working in jobs that require a great deal of background knowledge and training, those workers are working more and more and working harder and harder, and yet taking home less and less a year. In the same amount of time, the earnings of the top people, the CEOs, board trustees, members of the top 10%, those earners have seen their income increase significantly. And the current levels now show that the gap between the very rich and everybody else is immense. The rich are getting poorer, the working class is getting poor, and the poor is getting into a place where they'll never be able to get out of it. Increasing the minimum wage, argue the liberals, increases economic activity, spurs job growth, and reduces poverty. Working class people, unlike the wealthy who tend to hold on to their wealth, tend to spend it back into the economy. It means that there's more money that they can spend on getting things for themselves and their family. And if they're spending more, that means that more money is going into the economy. If more money is going into the economy, that means that the economy is doing better, and that means that employers are doing better. They're making more money because working class people are buying their things. More money rises up. A rising tide brings up all ships. And if we see that the lower income workers are able to make more money, then we're going to see that that's going to go throughout our entire economy. On top of it, dependence on government programs like food stamps and welfare, Medicaid will all be decreased as workers are able to become more independent by making a decent living wage. Increasing the minimum wage to a living wage secures that more and more people won't live below that poverty line, especially those who are working. And we see the people that are hit by this the worst often fall along race and gender lines. And this would be a way to address the horrible scar of racial and gender equality that has continued to plague economically and many other facets our people and culture, according to liberals. According to the conservatives, that's not true. Increasing the minimum wage does not make any sense. It will lead to more poverty, more unemployment, more inflation. I own a company. I don't have unlimited resources. I have a budget amount that I can spend on my employees to pay for their wages. And the conservatives' argument is simple math. So if I have $900 that I can spend on wages in a month, and I have 3 employees that I'm paying, $300 a month each, all of a sudden the minimum wage goes up to, where I would have to pay them $400 a month each. I'm going to have to fire one of those employees. If I'm a small business owner, if I'm trying to get by and I'm working really hard and put up my capital and time and investment and trying to make this opportunity and give the people the opportunity for jobs, I'm going to have to hire less people in order to keep my business open. And if we have more people who are unemployed because of an increase in the minimum wage, that's going to lead to more poverty. That's going to lead to more people being dependent on government programs. And on top of it, companies are going to push their increased costs onto consumers. So now, me as a consumer, my prices are all going to go up. So minimum wage means that everybody's paying more. Inflation gets higher, the cost of living gets higher. You want to keep the cost of living down? Don't raise the minimum wage. In fact, conservatives, many of them would argue, we shouldn't even have it. Because establishing and increasing a minimum wage is pretty anti-capitalistic, and it's against our Constitution. Employee performance should be a determining factor in whether or not their employees' wages go up. If I have employee A who works really hard and shows up early every day and does great customer service and brings more money into my company, and employee B shows up late every day, is rude to customers, is costing me money, but I can't afford to get rid of them and train a whole new person, according to minimum wage, I got to pay both of them the same amount. Wouldn't it be better, argue the conservatives, that I could say to employee A who's doing a great job, hey, I'm rewarding you for your great work. Here's a raise. Employee B, I'm sorry, I'm going to be taking away some of your pay because you're costing me money. You want to see your wages go up? You need to act more like employee A. It gives an incentive for good work. It gives an incentive for productivity, and it incentivizes worker performance, and that's the whole idea. In our economic system, that if you work hard and do well, then you're more likely to earn more. And if you don't, then you're likely to earn less. So it de-incentivizes employees from wanting to do a good job. It leads to more of a sense of entitlement. And speaking of entitlement, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that says the federal government is entitled to set wages for private companies. It's an overreach of the government. It infringes on employers' rights to run their company the way that they want to. And they're the ones who put up the money. They're the ones who put up the time and investment. They're the ones who created it. And what gives the government the right to tell them how to run it? How I pay my employees should be based off of my decision as the employer, not up to Uncle Sam. And they're also going to argue most minimum wage workers are not independent. They're not supporting a family. So increasing it is going to have some unintended consequences. Large portion of minimum wage workers are teenagers, people working in fast food industry and other things who are living with parents, who aren't paying utilities, who aren't paying bills, who aren't paying for rent. So they're not exactly affected by cost of living increases. They're making extra money and getting job experience. So by increasing the minimum wage, you're actually going to be reducing the job opportunities for low-skilled workers like teenagers or people who don't have degrees or people who haven't been skilled trained in a trade. You're going to reduce those jobs and they're low skilled, so it's going to be more and more difficult for them to get their jobs. And you'll see less tax revenue coming in as more employers start to resort to hiring people off the books because they just can't afford to pay for employees on the books. And on top of it, you're going to see more companies resort to robots, automation, things where I don't have to pay any workers if I buy a robot. And that's another way that they'll try to save costs if you keep increasing the minimum wage. So the conservatives are going to argue, no, don't have a minimum wage. So post your thoughts on one of the issues discussed in the comment section below. I can't wait to read it. We're going to be getting ready for our topics. Next week, we'll be wrapping up this unit, and we're going to be getting ready for our one-on-one debates. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.